there anything you want to say, Pierre?
I haven't raped no one at all. I haven't killed no one. I don't know nothing about it.
He was sitting there, looking at my officers in the face and in effect saying to them, if you think I'm guilty, prove it.
It was a crime that shocked hardened police officers and from which friends and relatives of the victims will never recover. One July night in 2007, an entire family was bludgeoned to death. Police would have described the murders of Beverly Samuels and her 2 teenage children as near executions.
Well, the scene itself was quite horrific. You've got a mother and her 2 children have been brutally murdered in their own home. You've got Beverly here. She's got her eldest, Keisha, and she was studying law and had a really bright future ahead of her. And then the youngest, 13 years old, Fred, just a real benign soul, really, and a really nice little family unit. It was quite clear from the outset there'd been a high level of violence and they'd been bludgeoned to death with something that was particularly substantial and heavy. And in fact, subsequently we found out that it was this 3-pound engineer's ball-peen hammer that had been used to kill all 3.
The 2 women were sexually assaulted, is that right?
The women had been quite viciously sexually violated, yes.
And what about Fred?
I'm certain that Fred had been murdered purely because he was a potential witness against the murderer. The murderer saw him as a threat to him and cold-bloodedly bludgeoned him to death with that hammer.
Keith, yeah, what have you got?
Upstairs, we've got one deceased female.
Have you looked downstairs?
Hey, the person who did this is called Pierre Williams.
And who are you, love?
I'm a neighbour, but Pierre Williams was here last night.
Pierre Williams?
Pierre Williams.
All right. I'll tell you what, love. Let's go and have a chat about it and you can tell me all about it.
Pierre Williams was an ex-boyfriend of Beverly Samuels and had been at the house the previous evening. Now, he was nowhere to be seen. If he was the killer, then he was an extremely dangerous man. He needed to be found, and found quickly. Because lives were at risk, police took the very unusual step of going public.
In the past few minutes, police in Manchester have named a man they want to question over the murders of a woman and her 2 teenage children. The man's name is Pierre Williams. Police say he should not be approached.
What happened next took police completely by surprise.
Police emergency.
Yeah, I've been on the news today saying I'm a suspect for the murder inquiry.
What's your name?
Pierre Williams. That's what the police were coming to see me and I was hoping to sort it all out.
The last person police were expecting to hear from was Williams, but within hours of the appeal going out, he'd handed himself in and was arrested.
Can you give me your full name and date of birth, please?
Pierre Williams, 14 for the 1274.
Okay, thanks.
So you got to interview him. What was he like in interview?
When somebody gives themselves in, you expect them to come forward and give a version of events, to explain why they were there.
And he wasn't doing that?
He wasn't doing that.
One thing, Pierre. If the cops have got it all wrong, if we're barking up the wrong tree, if you're the wrong man, I need to drop you like a hot potato and go out chasing the real bad guy. Can you at least deny being involved in this?
No comment.
What do you say, Pierre?
No comment.
What was he effectively trying to do in that interview, do you think?
He knows we've got an absolute maximum of 92 hours. So we get him on Saturday morning, we've got him till Tuesday night.
Williams' plan was breathtakingly audacious. He was going to stonewall every question put to him and gamble police wouldn't find enough evidence in time to charge him with the murders. He knew that without evidence, they could only hold him for a maximum of 92 hours. Once released, he could flee the country, or worse, kill again.
The pathologist is on standby.
Williams had forced detectives onto the back foot. It can take weeks to gather, process and analyse evidence from a crime scene. So, with less than 3 days before they would have to release him, police had to move fast.
Well, come on then, let's get on with it.
So because Williams could claim he had a legitimate reason to be in the house, you had to find evidence that was crime-specific, didn't you?
Well, that's exactly the right way of describing it. Williams knew full well he had legitimate access to the house. He could explain being there. What we did find out, the more research we did into him, he'd been an ex-member of the Gooch gang. One of his roles had been to clean up after the scenes. He'd become very forensically aware and quite certain that he used that knowledge to tidy up the scene.
Yeah, boss. You won't believe it. No fingerprints, no trace blood in the sinks.
So did he leave anything? Did he make any mistakes?
He did. We found, in the bedroom, a footwear mark in the victim's blood.
Well, we'll have something back at the lab with you as soon as possible.
So you had a footprint that you could link directly to the murder scene, the crime scene, not just the house?
Yes, that could only have been left by the murderer.
If detectives could prove the footprint in blood was from Williams, they could charge him with the murders. They desperately needed to search his flat for his shoes, but Williams had no intention of telling them his address.
What is your current address, Pierre? No comment. Do you have an address? No comment.
Williams must have thought his plan was working. He'd been in custody for 3 days. In just over 24 hours, he'd be free to go. Detectives urgently needed a breakthrough. It came on Monday afternoon.
Oh, Mr. Foster, please. Yeah, just to let you know, I'm just going through his text. I think I found an address for Williams over in Birmingham.
Right, I want CID.
Officers were immediately sent to search Williams' flat.
I'm relying on that, thanks.
But again, he was one step ahead of police. Before handing himself in, he'd got rid of the shoes. Straight line thinking had clearly hit the buffers. So what was the plan then?
Well, we sat down around the table and spent some time trying to think just exactly where we're going to get this evidence from. And we came up with the plan that if we could find a footwear mark in Pierre Williams's home address that matched the footwear mark at the scene of the murder, we'll have got that jigsaw fit. We'll have got him and linked him to the scene of the crime as well.
What Williams didn't know was he could have left latent footprints invisible to the naked eye in his flat. Forensic scientists spent Tuesday painstakingly searching every inch of Williams' floor. By this stage, there were only hours before he'd have to be released.
Get on to Ian Foster, tell him we've got a print. Then call Charlie FSS, tell him we're on our way.
The gel lift was rushed from Birmingham to Chorley, where forensic scientists raced against the clock to provide confirmation that the prints came from the same shoe. So what did you actually do?
Well, the starting point is quite clearly to look to see that the pattern is in fact the same. When it is, they're both a Timberland Fleet Trekker sole, but beyond that, they're both actually the same size.
By this time we're into Tuesday evening, and I have to say I'm beginning a little bit fraught. Are we going to get this result in the time we need to get it in, or am I going to be faced with the awful prospect of him walking out of the doors?
Hello, Tom, yeah, it's Ian Foster here. Have you got anything yet? Nothing. Hey, okay.
At what stage did you realise you had a match?
Well, the shoes are worn. They tend to get damaged just by general sort of wear and tear. As they become damaged, they pick up their own unique character. And what we've got here is a close-up version looking at the mark in blood at the scene, the latent mark from Birmingham, and this is an enhanced or enlarged image, and on block for block we have the same defect occurring. We'd assess the evidence as being extremely strong scientific evidence to say that the mark that was made in blood at the murder scene was made by one and the same shoe as the mark that made a latent print in Pierre Williams' flat.
Ian Foster. Tom. Great. That is great.
And when the call came, what was that like?
Absolute relief. I can't tell you the relief. My real fear in all this was knowing full well how dangerous he was, that we would have tried our best, failed, he'd have gone out and murdered somebody else. I really would have had difficulty living with myself after that.
Pierre Williams, you were charged that between the 11th and 12th of July 2007 at Fallowfield, Manchester, you murdered Beverly Samuels.
With less than 3 of his 92 hours left on the clock, Pierre Williams was charged with the murders of Beverly, Keisha and Fred and remanded in custody. He thought he was cleverer than the system. He wasn't. His gamble had failed. At trial, Williams was given 3 life sentences with a minimum tariff of 38 years.
Well, my first thought is he'll be an old man when he comes out, if he ever does come out. And I have to say I think that's right and proper. But my thoughts really go out to the family of Beverly, Keisha and Fred. I think Pierre Williams has got everything he deserves.